those are providing protection. If I have an intrusion detection system or a vulnerability scanning system, it's doing measurements, maybe useful information, but by itself, this intrusion detection system isn't going to stop anything from happening. It's just going to give you an alarm. If nobody's there looking at the alarm, it didn't do any good. And I know of many situations where people have had expensive intrusion detection systems that have detected attacks, but nobody was paying attention to them, and the systems were hacked or the information was compromised because the intrusion detection system didn't provide protection. All it did was provide information that you can use or not use. So that's important to recognize, is which things really actually protect. We go back to the Enclave Architecture, and we can now take all of those things we were talking about and we can map them into the drawing. And I can say, here's my mail server. My public mail server is on my DMZ. It can receive incoming mail from the outside internet. What protects that mail server? The firewall. How do I monitor that, attacks against that mail server? Well, if I have an intrusion detection system on the DMZ, it has the possibility to warn me about things that are happening. I have a proxy server or a VPN server. Those can provide portals to other activities based upon somebody authenticating. So when that untrusted user is out there on the internet, once they connect to these other systems and authenticate themselves, then they're trusted, and then they can be allowed access to internal resources. And so basically the Enclave Architecture enforces those principles that we talked about in terms of separation and in terms of providing at least a place to hang the different security products to build an overall secure system. And overall, this model has been a very effective and strong model if we're talking about a single organization where I have people inside and people on the outside. And so while that's a good model, and can be implemented in either small or large applications, it's still based on that concept that I have one inside and everything else is untrusted and on the outside. And that's a very limited model for doing collaboration. But let's talk a little bit more about how you would actually implement policies within that model. And I'm just going to focus here on just to explain a little bit more about how this works. And I think this is important because in going through how this normally functions, you'll get some insights into its limitations also. So we're really talking about a system where you have this separation between the outside and the inside, or the external systems and the internal systems. So we basically have the firewall. Now, when you install a firewall, let me just ask: how many people here have actually worked with the firewall? Okay. On paper, it looks like they can do a lot of things because you can come up with some great ideas of what your firewall is going to do for you. The reality of it is you're into something like this. And this is a typical kind of interface that you have with the firewall. The only things you can really do with the firewall are the things that you have things to click and select and turn on or turn off. So you can't really come up with very complicated policies for the firewall to do because it really only does a certain set of things. It can't really, in general, discriminate, fine granularity of activities. Either you allow mail to, for example, that you can include, you can allow mail or you can deny it. You can allow the post office protocol or you can deny it. Now, those are the kind of things that you really have choices for. So they tend to be fairly limited in terms of the policies that they can do. And this is just a list of some of what those are in terms of the benefits of using a firewall. So in general, it includes more than just filtering packets and allowing them or denying them. It provides proxies. It'll provide a variety of logging information, and so forth. The typical policies that we're looking at for a firewall is to, if you look at the red X at the top, in general, deny anything trying to come directly into the system. It would typically allow access to the public servers on the DMZ, which is shown in the block underneath the firewall. It would also allow internal users on the intranet to be able to access the public servers, and it would allow internal users to have access to the outside world. But in general, the typical type of policies with the enclave model do not allow external people to just directly access things on the internal network. That's the general concept that's implemented with that. So when we're looking at designing a system, when we combine the different products together, we're really looking at how much security can we provide, how much will it cost, and how complicated does that really make my system. And so if you really look at adding security, you always have to balance, well, how much do you really need? You don't want to go overboard and put extra products or extra restrictions on systems than what is needed, because it doesn't add the benefit that's needed for that extra complexity. One of the factors that comes in is really choosing the right products. And there are a lot of ways that people choose products. And I have found that in my own surveys that most of the ways in which people do this are wrong. They're not really the right kinds of thought process to follow. And I can't tell you how many times I have seen people select products based on magazine articles. You know, it could be a trade journal article. You know, it could be something like CIO Magazine or Information Week or something that all the IT people read. But basically, those articles are written by journalists. These journalists are not security professionals. They might know a little bit of the buzzwords. They might have, you know, had some experience in the past with information systems, but their opinions are driven by a lot of other factors other than the quality of the product. They're going to write articles about information that the marketing people give them, and also their main source of income is their advertising. So they're going to favor their advertisers. They're not going to slam their people who are paying their salaries. So in general, magazine articles are a horrible way to compare and choose products. User surveys. Well, it's the blind leading the blind. You know, a user survey, you know, just because a large number of people choose a particular product doesn't mean it's any good in the real world. You know, popularity. If you look at the most popular automobile, does that mean that's the best car that's out there? Probably not. It might mean it's the cheapest one, or it could mean that it's the one that has the best job of selling. And so user surveys, popularity, magazine articles are really the wrong way. There are a set of objective criteria. For example, the common criteria is publicly available information from the Defense Department, and these are formally tested products that are the certification reports are publicly available, and these give, you know, a good objective assessment that the product really does what it says it does, and that it has been tested and independently verified to have a certain level of quality. And you know, certainly advice of people who are actually in the security businesses is a good metric too. And so we're really looking at how strong is that firewall. What you're really measuring is how hard and how much effort would be required to compromise that product. And there is a great deal of difference between different products that are out there. So that's something to think about, is really how strong a product do you really need to satisfy your security requirements. So I'm going to now jump into the cross-domain issue. And we're really looking at the issue now of collaborating across multiple organizations, such as multiple businesses or between different user communities, and to satisfy the concept of sharing information as a requirement, and then how to integrate applications across different organizations. And the typical problem that we're looking at is two different user groups have a community of interest, and by community of interest,